What's going on, guys? Matthew Weiss here, WeissAdvice.com. In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at The Oven by Plugin Alliance and Maor Appelbaum. Maor Appelbaum is a mastering engineer in Los Angeles, California, and a friend of mine, so he hooked me up with this plugin a little bit early. I'm going to be honest, I've shot this video maybe like 5 or 6 times already, and I'm really struggling with it because normally when I do plugin-centered videos, what I'm showing is how I use a plugin, because I think that's more interesting than what the plugin does or how it works or whether or not I think it's good or bad, which I think is completely useless. But I'm showing a technique or techniques that I use that particular plugin for. This is a little different because I just got this plugin. I don't even entirely exactly know what's going on, although I have a pretty good idea of what's going on and I can certainly tell what I'm hearing. But I don't necessarily have a specific how I use this because I haven't had it that long. But what I can say is I really, really, really like it. It's a really, really cool plugin, and I see myself using it a lot in a lot of different contexts. So I'm going to throw on my Weiss Instant Fat Drum Kit, my first and only preset with this so far. And let's do a little before and after with this drum loop. By the way, those are pretty closely level matched. I think they're actually, in terms of RMS values, about the same, or peak values certainly the same, because there's a big compression curve that's kind of mixed in with all the saturation and EQ, so it's kind of doing a whole bunch of stuff. But it's a really, really cool processor for adding personality, life, and especially thickness to something. And that's where I think it really shines, making something feel very thick, even in frequencies that we don't necessarily associate with heaviness or thickness. We think of the low end when we think of heaviness. We don't necessarily think of the high end in terms of heaviness, but we can get that from this. So let's set this over to factory default here. So, okay, let me give a brief overview of what I believe we've got going on here. So first we have our input controls. This one is going to be an input driver, the calibration mode, pretty straightforward. And then this is going to lower the saturation threshold and compression curve thresholds and things like this. So this is a really, really important little control right here, because even once we set things, I find that it's really nice to be able to kind of move this around just to kind of fine tune things. So these two are saturators. This temp control here, to me, is this very husky, very warm, woolly kind of a saturator. It feels kind of like transformer, like overdriving a whole bunch of transformers or something like that. You can hear how just this one control can really, really transform a sound. If you're focusing on it, what you notice is that while it kind of colors up everything across the frequency spectrum, it really feels like it's putting a lot of weight and fullness into the kick and the snare particularly. So this is telling me that there's kind of a tilt to the EQ or saturation or whatever exactly is going on here that's favoring the low mids and lows a little bit more than the upper mids and highs. Whereas if we jump over to this saturator here, to me that sounds like it's pretty neutral across the board, but ever so slightly favoring the top end. It brings a little bit more sheen. It feels a little bit more second harmonic driven. So I'm thinking that this is some kind of transistor or transformer, kind of like a transistor series or transformer series type of saturator. And this here is some kind of like a triode tube type of saturator here, where it's favoring second harmonics or something like that. And the two work in conjunction. I've noticed that this one here reacts a lot more sensitively the more that I push this one. So I'm guessing temp actually feeds into cook, or at least that's how I'm hearing it. And then we've got this little switch here that's acting like a driver. I mean, immediately I just like it on high mode because I think it's just pushing things harder, and that's what I want from this right now. And then this control, I'm not entirely sure what exactly it's doing. Like, I hear a slight difference between the two, but if I push these both pretty hard, let's turn this output down. Let's turn these way up. I hear on the kick drum very specifically, there's a bit of shape change. The kick drum has a little bit more natural dynamic on bake, and broil, it feels like the kick drum is getting a little bit more squared off. So this is either some kind of a filter going into the saturator that's reducing some of the lows, or it's changing the compression curve a little bit to be a little bit more hard knee, and so it's acting kind of almost more like a soft limiter than like a gentle compression curve kind of a thing. And I'm pretty sure it's the latter, but I'm not entirely positive. All right, let's set this in a way where we like it. Oh, this control here. We've got electric and gas. That to me feels kind of like the high and low, but it's applying very specifically to this cook knob. So like if I have the cook knob down and I change it, I don't really hear much of a change. If I turn this up so that we have a little bit going on from temp, I do hear a little bit more forwardness show up, so maybe it is kind of affecting this, but I really feel like I hear this when I start messing around with this. Like that just felt like everything got pushed really far forward. So it's like some kind of a gain stage feeding some kind of saturation compression stage. It just kind of pushes and mushes everything forward. So it's almost like a mushy control. All right, let's get a good setting for these drums here real quick. I think we're off to a really good start. I really like that. Now we go on to these EQs right here. Low, mid, high. This is a low shelf of some sort. This is a mid band. And then this is what I believe switches between a top. It's like either the corner frequency changes in a weird way, or it actually switches from something that's more Pultec-ish, where it's actually like a bell at the top, to being a shelf at the top. And let's focus on the top here because the hi-hat is really interesting on this drum loop. Actually, you know what I think is going on? I think they're both shelves, and I think this B one is lowering the corner frequency, because listen to the clank of the hi-hat on A versus B. When we move it to B, you'll hear more clank show up in the hi-hat. That's what I'm hearing going on. But more importantly, it's just the fact that it is bringing out more clank to me, it doesn't really even necessarily matter exactly what these are. It just matters what they're doing. So I like the clank in this hi-hat. To me, it makes me feel like those like old school R&B records where the hat is like dark but also louder than everything else in the mix. Like if you've ever listened to like some of those Bill Withers records or Al Green records, that hat is like all 2 to 3K and louder than everything, and it's holding down the rhythm. And I really, really dig that sound, and I think it's going to work for this loop. So I'm going to focus on that. Yeah, I dig that. Let's play around with the mids a little bit. Yeah, so the AB here is definitely changing the corner frequency. It might also be changing the saturation curve in some way. I feel like A feels very like center frequency. Like I feel like I'm hearing it from like 600 to 1K. And then when I switch it over to B, I feel like it drops from like maybe 200 to 400, something like that. But it also becomes a lot woollier, and it's hard to tell if that woolliness is coming from some kind of a saturation mechanism or if it's coming from the fact that we've just lowered the corner frequency and things sound woollier down there. But if we listen to the snare, I feel like that's a pretty strong giveaway in terms of what's happening. And the kick. We can tell from the snare and the kick. Right, like we can definitely tell from the kick. Clean up those mids a little. Kind of sounds good dirty too, though, doesn't it? Gosh, I kind of like that, actually. It's like, it's dirty and wrong, but I kind of like it. I think I'm going to leave it like that. All right, let's check out the lows. So here I kind of feel like it's doing the opposite. I feel like A is actually lower, so it's like it's not picking up as much as picking up more subs. Whereas B, I feel like it's going higher into the bass frequencies, and so it's really picking up like the core of the kick and the snare. I definitely like B better for this particular drum kit. Just a little bit is fine, though. So what's interesting, now, I don't know really anything about this except for one thing. Maor was very specific to tell me, because I asked him not to tell me anything about it. I just wanted to play with it, mess around with it, and just kind of go with what my ear is telling me. But he said there's one thing that you do have to know. The flow knob here is not exactly an output. It's actually a gain stage in between two saturation stages. So I believe between whatever's going on here and whatever saturation is going on at the burners. But I might be wrong about that. Maybe it's between the temp and cook saturation stages. But either way, what's important to know is that this gain stage shows up in front of one of the saturators. So if I start backing this off, it's going to desaturate the sound. Whereas if I back off the output, it's going to keep things the same. It's just going to lower the level. So those aren't exactly the same. And you can hear the transients clean up when I start to turn this flow knob down. With that said, for right now, I want to keep it really nice and grungy, so let's just lower from the output. So same thing kind of going on here with this sizzle control. This is an airband. The A one is definitely a higher corner frequency. It's smoother sounding. It kind of reminds me of almost like a mag type thing, like a 40 kilohertz kind of bump. And then when we switch it over to B, it definitely moves down into a much more audible range. I feel like I'm getting a lot more 8K, 9K, 10K from that. I like that. I think we're just going to add a little bit of it. I also love boosting highs into saturation, just in general. I love that process because the saturation naturally excites and compresses the high end, and so it becomes this kind of like filmy textural high, as opposed to just like boosting high ends. I kind of demonstrated this in the tape saturation video I did last week. So, I mean, I'll put a little link to that too, because it's a very cool technique. But here it kind of just seems to be happening in the plugin. I'm not really sure what this Bunsen thing is doing. Like, to me, it sounds like the high end opens up in an interesting way when I switch it on, but it's not like dramatically different. It's kind of subtle. Let me see if I can loop up some like hi-hats real quick. Like, it's very subtle, but I feel like the top end just extends ever so slightly more with the Bunsen on. I'm not positive what this is doing, but I like it. But I also don't super notice it. So let's find a good setting for these again. Just a little less. Yeah, that top end. Actually, I think I like it with the Bunsen off, but with a little more top end pushed into it. Yeah, that's giving me more of that like funky R&B kind of vibe where it like doesn't extend into the super treble. Like it doesn't have it starts to feel a little bit weirdly modern with that Bunsen thing on. And so I like it being a little bit more pushed, but maybe not quite as open in the top. I think that's a better feel for where this record's at, or where this drum kit is at. I think this is a cool sound. Now I just want to kind of experiment with maybe the calibration, the headroom, that kind of stuff. That might be a little too thick sounding. I think we're driving the input a little bit too hard on that. Very cool. All right, let's bring that into the context of a mix, and let's do a little before and after. Let's push the drums up a little bit more, just dry drums up even more. Okay, now with the oven on. Actually, it might be a little too full. I think I'm going to take the parallel mix and I'm going to push it down just a little bit. Yeah, that gave me a really, really good feeling. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of cool stuff. And I think the thing that is one of the things that I have mixed feelings about in plugins are things that do too much, and this is like right on the border. Sometimes I like it when we have a little bit less option because I think it's really valuable as engineers and producers that we acknowledge that we don't have to use everything all at once, and sometimes we can get led into doing too much when we have too many things that we can do. So, for example, like I would consider that if I were to get to the mastering side of this and process everything, I'm not sure I would necessarily use all of these controls. I think I would probably just kind of focus on putting a little polish into things. Like, I like that just as like a general setting, and I'm not using any of this other stuff here because just that is already doing plenty. I think it's giving me a great vibe to open up the top and give me a little bit of polish, just that little bit of like making it feel like a stone that's been, well, shined and polished. I keep saying polished. And so we don't necessarily have to use everything that this is offering, but I think you're going to see this show up in a lot more of my videos moving forward. Okay, so that's my video on this. I know this is not a typical kind of video of like how it works or what I think of it or, you know, whatever else is out there, but I think that this is probably the most informative I can be with it. And yeah, I think we should wrap it up there. So, okay, if you dig this video, hit that like button. If you want to catch more videos like this, hit subscribe with the bell notification so you get notified. Also, check out the description box below. All this month and maybe even going forward, if you sign up for the WeissAdvice newsletter, you're going to get a copy of the low-end guide, which is a full-length tutorial. It is an excellent tutorial. It is one that I could certainly sell. All I can say is just check it out because it's going to give you some information on how to work the low end. That's just going to give you such an edge on your processing and capabilities that you're going to be like, how did I live without knowing this information? Take my word for it. Anyway, lastly, you know what we say at WeissAdvice. We are musicians, sound is our instrument, and I will catch you next time.